Romeo and Juliet is the classic love story.
I think it's one of the most universal plays that Shakespeare wrote.
The themes in it are very alive and very new.
It has that kind of universal appeal. It's a very simple story.
The idea of love is pretty universal, and the idea of betrayal. So I think it's easily transposed into any generation or any time period.
The whole casting process is so rigorous and so draining. Like physically, you'll come home after like the callbacks or the generals, and you'll just be like, oh my lord.
We auditioned for 3 different shows at once, and so we prepare like anywhere from like 2 to 3 monologues.
The first night is a big audition with everyone, and everyone comes in and does 2 contrasting pieces.
Sometimes we have to do a song if we're doing a musical that semester. And then we have like a time frame, and we have certain restrictions. Like for this one, of course, one of them had to be a Shakespeare piece. And then we go up on Shanks on stage in front of the directors and their stage managers and the assistant director and anyone who wants to sit in and watch the auditions. And we perform our pieces.
Do you know what he said? He said, I don't know where she is. She is where she is.
You know what's wrong with everybody? Too smart. It's like everybody knows everything. And everybody argued everything, and everything got hashed out and settled the day before I was born.
Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers. Thou art the ruins of the noblest man that ever lived in the tide of times. Woe to the hand that shed this costly blood.
Usually the next day they'll post callbacks lists.
They told us callbacks. They didn't tell us who we were called back for. So it was just, these 18 guys are called back, and the play is Romeo and Juliet.
They had selected different scenes. In this case, they had written out who they wanted for specific parts.
And so he would have like 2 to 3 actors read the parts for the same scene, and they would do it like 3 or 4 times before moving on to another scene.
Who bare my letter then to Romeo? I could not send it. Here it is again. It fits when such a villain is a guest. I'll not endure him. 'Tis gone, 'tis gone. You are welcome, gentlemen. Come, musicians, play.
A gentleman, nurse, that loves to hear himself talk and will speak more in a minute than he will stand to in a month.
Oh, and he speaks anything against me, I'll take him down.
And then we had the casting. Like the cast lists go up, everybody runs over there and either cries or screams at the top of their lungs like I did.
Christy Award, who's the vocal coach, is hugely responsible for me feeling just like even remotely comfortable doing this.
I've had one-on-one meetings with Christia, and we have gone through every single line that I say in the show. There's not a single line where we haven't gone back and been like, okay, what is she talking about?
She's been helping us learn how to say our lines and what they mean. Why'd she say the thing with the dog's name?
Yeah, that's Rover. That's.
Oh. Okay.
I'm sure it's not the same as Romeo and Rosemary because that's a dog.
Yeah.
So she's just really illiterate.
Oh, okay.
And so she doesn't believe you when you tell her, my name starts with an R. Oh, no. You're so funny. That's not it. You know, so.
Oh, okay. I thought she was trying to make fun of it.
No, not at all.
There is a specific way of doing Shakespearean works in terms of punching the verbs and making sure that you're not focusing on pronouns. So we would go through all of that and making sure that it made sense and making sure that we were comfortable with the dialogue.
You know, Shakespeare wrote the way that we talk, and now I understand that.
She's really great to spitball ideas off of, so if she has one idea and you have another idea, you can look them up together and find out some way to make sense of Shakespeare, because sometimes things don't make sense. It's also good because she has the power to cut things if it's impossible to make it make sense.
Page 109, there's an actual cut. It's lines 77 through 79. I must another way through to when it is dark.
Cutting Shakespeare there's actually quite a long history of cutting Shakespeare. Very, very, very rarely is a Shakespeare play done with the text verbatim.
The cutting is definitely necessary, because if it wasn't, we'd have a 3-hour play and everyone would fall asleep and no one would hear me say all my lines, and that would suck. It's interesting because a lot of lines, even lines that I really liked, have been cut.
When you cut lines out of Shakespeare, and I don't know how you all did it, but I put a little box around what's cut and put a big X through it, but I can read what we cut. And I want you all to read what we've cut because the whole play is here. We're going to perform the whole play's story. So the words that Shakespeare wrote, we're not going to say them all, but we're going to play them all.
That's one of the things that we think about as we're cutting the text. Is this something that an actor can convey?
Before Romeo goes into the tomb, he has a scene with Balthazar, his servant, and he tells Balthazar to leave and then pays him and says thank you and asks him to leave. And he's in a very emotional, unstable set. And there's a line that I really loved that was basically he says to Balthazar, if you come here, I'm going to rip you apart and I'm going to tear you new and I'm just going to kill you, essentially. And even though that line is cut, it's my job as the actor and as Romeo to still be able to present that emotional state without the lines. We started fight choreography, learning the basics of sword fighting to make it realistic and believable and make it look like we want to kill this person, but then also completely and utterly safe at the same time.
So on that first one, what is it you're trying to get? You're trying to pierce his heart. Boom, there. What is it that you're trying to get after you get him out of the way?
Diego's a former student of ours. He graduated in 2006, and since his time here, where he did delve into combat and went to some workshops in the summers, he's been after me to come back and do a number of things, not only in the combat area, but also in the movement area, and it just seemed right that he was the guy to bring in.
As the fight director, my role is to make sure that the fight moments in Romeo and Juliet, that those moments are safe, so that the actors can reproduce that movement and tell that story the exact same each night.
And first thrust, slow. Paris thrusts. As he parries, he has to move to the side, careful not to wrap. So he'll start it here. Then he comes in center, boom, it gets stopped. That preps for an elbow. We gotta make sure, come back, come back, come back, come back. We gotta make sure that we're close enough for this elbow to make the space later. And elbow him, boom, and then make the space. Very nice. He comes in for a thrust and a lunge. He comes in with a cut downwards. That separates them. First phrase.
In high school, I had been in 2 productions that used swords. This is definitely a lot more thorough.
We kind of went through the preliminary stuff the first day, learning stances, different moves, different ways of holding the sword, technique, kind of things like that. And it was really easy to apply that then to the choreography because he would say, hey, make up your own using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I begin by having the actors create the beginning, the skeleton, the map or the outline of where the fight's gonna go. And it's all right for me if some parts are a little bit sloppy or if they didn't get it exactly. For that first draft, I just wanna have the basic shape.
Draw out. Come in. Put your swords there. Boom, up. Open them up, open them up.
Remember thy slashing blow. Heart fools, put up thy sword, you know not what you do.
After that, I go into a second draft where I do some cleanup, where I look at specificity, where I think about each particular moment of the fight being motivated. So is there a reason why after the punch, the guy kicks him in the face? Is there a reason that after that kick in the face, he gets up and throws him to the ground? Or was that me imposing what I think is cool and not serving the story? I need to motivate each move leading to the next move, and that has to be character driven, and that has to be text based. If not, then it's just a cool fight, and it'll be a great YouTube clip, but it won't truly reach the dramatic impact that I want.
I'm a scenic designer, and so my job is to create the world that Shakespeare has hinted at. That includes conversations with the director, and then collaboration with the lighting designer and the costume designer for color, and then you give that entire packet to the technical director.
We have weekly design meetings where we meet with all the designers and Mr. Lutz to kind of touch base, see where everybody's at.
To piece this masking,
up here is also not a problem. It seems like it helps if the masking is essentially downstage of the stairs anyway.
Yeah. The scenic designer gives me drawings that essentially just have to say what the show should look like, not unlike what an architect would give an engineer. And then it's my job to figure out whether or not we can afford that, figure out what materials we're going to make that out of, design the structural elements of that, and then see that through to completion in the shop.
I actually started off with Lutz wanted platforms that were in the house. That's kind of what he said at the beginning of our meetings.
One of the things that I had seen in this play is that the fighting and the early part of the play takes place in the streets of Verona, and they fight in the streets, which means they're fighting somewhat in the aisles of Shanklin Theater.
There's these giant platforms that have steps leading up to them that are extending into the audience.
They kind of sit just kind of in the sections of the seats. We have covered some seats, and both upstage and downstage.
There's all these fights that are going to be blocked on them, so there's a lot of lateral movement, a lot of people running and stopping quickly and different things like that. So I'm needing to do a lot more thinking about actual structural integrity.
So I actually kind of started with the opening fight scene. The street scenes kind of exist in all of Verona, and so the entire set is part of the street scenes. And then kind of went to the balcony and then the tomb.
We've got over 250 yards of fabric in the show already.
For the most part, everyone's going to have at least 2 costumes. They're going to have 1 costume for most of the scenes that they're in, and then everyone's going to change for the ball/masquerade scene. I have 5 different costumes.
Luckily for me, Romeo has 1 costume, so he dresses and then he pretty much is up all night and then is banished and never goes home to change.
He was too plain for being Romeo and Romeo and Juliet. And the lighter values will bring him like into focus most of the time. He was really dark.
People respond to color first. As the costume designer, because colors are so specific to the person and to the character, we normally start out with the color. We have several meetings, like Devon Agu, the scenic designer, and I. We sat down at least 3 separate times and discussed color. Be like, okay, so you want to use a lot of green in your set, then we can't use a lot of green in our set, kind of thing.
First we came in and got our measurements done, and then they had created the idea of what the costume would look like without the colors, without the appropriate material. And they fit it to me, so I tried on the costume and they would like put it in where it wasn't fitting.
Yeah, so ideally like this line comes like off here.
Because the men wear tights and tunics, they make us wear mock-up type outfits for it. And that's just so in the rehearsal process we get used to being in the movement and being in these clothes so that when we actually get into tech week and have the real costumes, it doesn't change everything.
As the costumes develop into real fabric and they start seeing the actualized things and they start have fittings in their real stuff, I always like to keep a really open conversation between the actors, and as they're developing their character, I want to make sure that what I've deduced from their character, from their script, is still along that line.
They're very conscious about all that stuff. They're, okay, can you do all of your sword moves and stuff in this costume, and you'll be up there for a fitting having a sword fight in the air just to make sure that you can move your arm up there if you need to and stuff.
I'm also being wigged for the show, which is really exciting.
We have a Juliet who has short blonde hair when we really wanted to have long blonde hair.
It's still going to be blonde, but it's going to be longer and it's going to be a little fuller. There's going to be a big fancy waterfall braid in the back, and yeah, I'm really excited. The guy who plays Lord Montague, he also has a wig because his hair's blonde, and Romeo and Lady Montague are both brunettes.
Alright, can I have you do the fingers again, but very gently on the lips this time. Okay, there's a lot of lace right here. Okay, so.
They actually had to pin curl my hair and put saran wrap around it and then tape it down and like mark where my hairline was.
Right now we're working on building all of our wigs, and we do that 1 hair at a time. So it's a really time-consuming process.
And then they have this wig that they ordered that they're that they took apart and they're redoing by hand to make sure that it fits my head.
Everyone has a picture in their head of what Romeo and Juliet should look like. There are 2 movies of Romeo and Juliet, so everyone knows what they want to see. So hopefully we can provide something that is something that people want to see, but is still creative and not what they've seen before.
Romeo and Juliet's a play that's done in a lot of different ways, and this time I hope when you see Romeo and Juliet that you'll understand and hear every word the actors say.